One of the strangest ways to recognize an organic chemist is by the tiny little holes that appear in the base of their t-shirt. I mean, we're not idiots, we wear lab coats when we're doing work, but we still don't know why this happens. I'd like to start discussing more complex and interesting topics about the world of science research in these videos. I'm going to start by telling you about the different stages that exist in the career of a professional researcher. Obviously it starts with doing a Bachelor of Science at a university. In Australia, if you get good marks in your bachelor's degree, you can do an honours year. In an honours year, you do more advanced classes and a research project. Honours is not a degree on its own, it's still just a component of a bachelor's degree, and in fact it's not recognised by most universities in the world. But it does serve as a prerequisite to doing a PhD. Instead of doing honours, you can choose to do a master's degree. A master's degree is similar to an honours, it combines both coursework and a research project, but it takes 2 years. Master's degrees are available in most countries in the world, and they are the most common prerequisite to a PhD. And of course, the highest level of degree you can get is a PhD, or a Doctor of Philosophy. PhD in Australia, all you do is work on your own research project. This is quite uncommon. In most areas of the world, you need to do classes as well as a research project, much in the same way you do in a master's degree. A typical PhD lasts anywhere from 3 years to 8 years, depending on which country you're doing it in. Usually you do honours or masters while still living with your parents or working a part-time job to support yourself. The PhD is almost always done with the help of a scholarship or stipend, usually given by your university or the government. By the time you get to doing a PhD, you already know how to do research and how to work in a lab, so you are kind of valuable. In Australia and the US, they typically fund you for about 3 to 3.5 years. If you want to extend your PhD longer than that, you're welcome to, but you're going to have to start funding yourself. So all these degrees are typically done at universities or institutions that are associated with the university. Once you've finished a PhD, if you want to keep working in research, you do what is called a postdoc. Standing for postdoctorate, this is the job you get once you have your PhD. Now in a postdoc you do basically the same sort of work that you did in your PhD, only now that you actually have a proper qualification, you get paid proper wages for it. A postdoc works with someone who runs their own research lab and spends all their time working in the lab, doing experiments, trying to get results in order to publish papers. It moves. Okay, so what about the person who has their own lab? This person is usually an associate professor or lecturer within the university, so they spend a good portion of their time actually teaching during semester. But career-wise, what they're primarily interested in is getting publications. So this person who runs their own lab gets to decide how many honours, masters and PhD students and postdocs they have in their lab at any one time. While being some sort of professor as far as the university is concerned, in terms of their research, this person can have many other different titles. They are either the principal investigator, chief investigator or project manager, and for students we usually call them our supervisor. They don't ever actually work in a lab. They sit in their office and they read all the literature and they choose which direction the research that is conducted in their lab will take. See that line? That's product! Yay! So a postdoc typically works on a contract that only lasts about 1 to 2 years. Another type of person who works in a lab is a research assistant or an RA. They work on a more permanent contract employed by the head of the lab and can have any qualification ranging from honours level up to PhD. An RA does more or less the same kind of job a postdoc does, and it typically involves a lot more housekeeping and lab managing type work. Now, of course, everything I've said applies almost exclusively to universities and research institutes associated with universities, and I haven't mentioned industry at all. Of course, there are a lot of other degrees offered by universities, so the ones I've told you about today are just the most common ones you'll find someone having if they're doing a career in research. The last thing I want to talk to you about today relates to a question that I get asked a lot. A lot of people, when I tell them I'm doing a PhD in a research project, ask me, how did you choose your topic? Now, for a humanities student, this sounds reasonable, but for a science student, this is a completely ridiculous question. No science student, whether it be honours, masters, or even PhD, chooses their own topic. They find someone who runs their own lab at a university or an associated institution, and if they like the research or if they like the work that they're doing, they apply to that researcher to be their student, and that researcher, who typically spends all day in their office reading up on the current knowledge in their field, comes up with research questions. They come up with projects that are applicable to honours, masters or PhD students, and when students approach them, they give them the option of doing one of those projects. So a student will come into a project initially doing what the lab head or their supervisor tells them to do. And if they're a good student, they'll figure out new questions to ask and new ways to approach answering those questions in their project as they proceed. If they're lucky, a student might be given a choice of multiple projects from a supervisor, then more often than not, you kind of just take what you're given. I mean, especially at an honours or master's level, you really don't know any different. And even at a PhD level, you can never really tell where the project's going to go until you've actually done it. Hope you've all had a productive first week of the new year. Now back to what I was doing. Wait, I'm done for the day. Home time! And all the things you can do with excess liquid nitrogen from your high vac at the end of the day, this is still my favorite.